This episode examines a real, unresolved disappearance. It does not accuse individuals or speculate beyond documented facts. All information presented is based on publicly available records. Most investigations are born from a void. A person vanishes, a motive is obscured, a timeline is fractured by missing pieces. They begin with absence. This case is different. This one begins with presence. An undeniable, documented, and yet utterly confounding presence captured for the world to see. We are not searching for a ghost in the static. We are staring directly at a figure who walked out of the shadows and into a digital record, only to disappear back into ambiguity. The evidence doesn't point toward a suspect. In many ways, the evidence, the suspect. It's a puzzle constructed not from what is missing, but from what is right in front of us. A figure moving with unnerving confidence through a space that was not their own. The person responsible was recorded. Their movements were documented by a network of motion-activated cameras, creating a breadcrumb trail of their journey through the building. Their time on scene was measured with digital precision, from the moment of entry to the moment of departure. Every step, every pause, every turn was captured. In the world of modern forensics, this is the ideal scenario. It's the kind of evidence that typically accelerates an investigation, providing investigators with a clear depiction of the perpetrator, their actions, and the sequence of events. It should have been the key that unlocked the entire case. It should have provided answers. And yet, nothing resolved. The very footage that promised clarity instead delivered a profound and lasting mystery. The presence of the recording became a paradox. The more it was watched, the less it seemed to reveal. Our story begins in the early hours of April 18, 2016, in Midlothian, Texas, a growing, tight-knit community just south of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. It's a place where the rhythm of life is steady, and the expectation of safety is woven into the fabric of the town. On this particular Monday morning, the pre-dawn quiet is undisturbed. The streets are empty. Most residents are still asleep, secure in the routines that define their lives. It is in this peaceful setting that Missy Bevers, a 45-year-old fitness instructor and mother of 3, begins her day. She arrives early at the Creekside Church of Christ, not for worship, but for work. She is there to prepare for her 5 a.m. Camp Gladiator fitness class. For Missy, this was routine, predictable, ordinary. She was known for her dedication, often the first to arrive and the last to leave. The church, a modern and welcoming building, served as a community hub, its doors open to various groups. On this morning, it was simply a gymnasium, a place for exercise and camaraderie. The location was familiar, the task was familiar, and the early hour was part of her established pattern. There was no reason for her to suspect that this day would be any different from the countless others that had come before it. Her arrival, just after 4 a.m., was precisely on schedule. But inside the building, a silent observer was already active. The church's internal security system, a series of motion-triggered cameras, had already been recording for nearly an hour. They were a passive feature of the building's infrastructure, designed to deter theft or vandalism, not to document a violent crime in progress. Their unblinking lenses were capturing a narrative that had begun long before Missy's truck pulled into the parking lot. For a time, the footage shows nothing unusual, just empty hallways and silent rooms. The building is still waiting. Nothing out of the ordinary happens, until, suddenly, it does. The timeline of events, as captured by the church's cameras, is chillingly clear. It provides a framework, a sequence of actions that are not in dispute. At 3:50 a.m., the first motion sensor is triggered. The suspect enters the building. They move through the hallways with a strange, almost meandering purpose. For the next 28 minutes, the cameras document this figure exploring the church. They open doors, walk through corridors, and appear to be searching, but for what remains unknown. They spend a significant amount of time inside, moving with a distinctive gait that would later become a focal point of the investigation. At 4:18 a.m., Missy Bevers enters the church. The fatal encounter occurs off-camera, in an area not covered by the surveillance system. The assault is swift. By 5 a.m., just as Missy's students are beginning to arrive in the parking lot, the suspect leaves the building, disappearing from view for the final time. There are no gaps in the recording. There are no missing minutes where the suspect's presence is unaccounted for. There is no uncertainty about the fundamental sequence of events. The digital record is complete, a continuous log of the intruder's time inside the church. From entry to exit, we have a comprehensive, second-by-second account. Everything lines up. The data is all there. The movements are all tracked. The presence is undeniable. And still, no one is identified. The face is hidden. The motive is a mystery, and the person who walked through these halls remains a phantom, known only by their digital footprint. The investigation had everything, and yet it had nothing. The analysis begins with the raw material. Hours of silent black and white footage from a fixed security camera. The quality is standard for its time. Not high definition, but clear enough to capture movement, form, and behavior. Our focus is a single individual, captured moving through this sterile corridor. At first glance, the scene is unremarkable. There is no obvious alarm, no visible threat. But within these mundane frames, investigators would search for the critical details that might unlock the case. The first layer of analysis is always the most direct. What do we see? The person on camera wears distinctive clothing. It's not just an outfit. It appears to be a uniform or a set of gear. This immediately raises questions. Is it authentic? Is it a disguise? Is it functional, or is it purely for appearance? Each piece of this ensemble becomes a data point, a potential clue to the identity, profession, or intent of the person wearing it. Let's break down the attire, piece by piece. First, a helmet. It's a full coverage model, obscuring the entire head and face. This is the most significant barrier to identification. Its shape is generic, similar to models used in law enforcement, private security, and even certain recreational activities. There are no visible insignias or markings. Next, a vest. It's bulky, suggesting it might be weighted or armored. It has multiple pouches and straps, consistent with tactical gear. Is it a ballistic vest, providing protection? Or is it a utility vest designed to carry tools? Its fit is also scrutinized. Does it appear tailored to the wearer? Or is it ill-fitting, suggesting it was acquired for a specific purpose, perhaps as part of a costume? Finally, heavy boots. They are dark, thick-soled, and appear to be work or combat style. Boots like these can alter a person's natural gait, affect their posture, and even change their perceived height. The combination of these three elements, helmet, vest, boots, creates a silhouette of authority and preparedness. It's a uniform that projects a sense of purpose, but the specific purpose remains entirely unknown. With the face and body obscured, investigators turn to the one identifier that cannot be easily disguised: movement. The study of how a person walks is known as gait analysis. It's a specialized field combining principles of biomechanics, anatomy, and behavioral science. In the footage, their gait is visible. Their posture is relaxed. The subject moves with a steady, unhurried rhythm. There is no sign of agitation or stress. Their arms swing naturally at their sides, not held rigidly or defensively. Their head is up, scanning the environment in a calm, methodical way. This relaxed demeanor is, paradoxically, one of the most confounding aspects of the footage. It doesn't align with the typical profile of an intruder who is trespassing or committing a crime. An intruder is expected to be tense, furtive, and quick. This person is the opposite. They aren't rushing. They aren't hiding. They move as if they belong there. This concept is sometimes called behavioral camouflage. It's the art of blending in not by being invisible, but by appearing so normal that you become invisible to scrutiny. Think of a maintenance worker in a hospital or a technician in an office building. Their presence is expected, so it goes unnoticed. The person in the footage exhibits this same quality. They test a door handle, find it locked, and move on without any sign of frustration or surprise. They pause, look down the corridor, and continue on their path. Every action is deliberate and economical. This behavior suggests a high degree of confidence and familiarity with the environment. It implies that, in their own mind, they have a legitimate reason to be there. Whether that reason is real or imagined is the central question of the investigation. This confident presence makes the task of profiling incredibly difficult. There are no red flags, no behavioral tells that immediately signal threat or intruder. There is only a quiet, unsettling sense of normalcy. Faced with this ambiguity, investigators analyze everything. The footage is sent to forensic labs and specialized analysts. Teams of experts, from forensic podiatrists to kinesiologists, are brought in to dissect every frame. They are not looking for a gotcha moment. They are looking for patterns, for subtle deviations from the norm that might betray the person behind the gear. The process is painstaking. The video is played forwards, backwards, and at different speeds. Each step, each turn, each gesture is isolated and examined. The goal is to deconstruct the subject's movements into a set of measurable metrics, creating a unique biomechanical signature. The analysis becomes incredibly granular. Stride length: the distance from the heel strike of one foot to the heel strike of the same foot. Is it consistent? Does it suggest a certain height? Arm swing: the degree and symmetry of the arm's movement. A reduced arm swing on one side could indicate an injury, or that the person is carrying something. Weight distribution: how the person shifts their center of gravity as they walk. Do they favor one leg? Is their balance perfect, or do they show subtle instability? Analysts also measure cadence, or steps per minute. They examine the degree of foot rotation, known as toe-in or toe-out. They look at pelvic rotation and the vertical displacement of the torso. Each of these data points is fed into software that compares it against vast databases of human movement. From these numbers, they hope to estimate the subject's height, weight, and even their general fitness level. But this data is not definitive, it's interpretive. And from this interpretation, competing theories emerge. For example, a slight limp or an uneven stride is detected. Some suggest injury, perhaps a pre-existing condition in the knee or hip, or a recent sprain. This theory sends investigators down one path, searching for individuals with known medical histories that match the gait pattern. Others suggest costume. The heavy, ill-fitting boots could be the cause of the unusual walk. The bulky vest might be restricting movement, forcing an unnatural posture. This theory points in a completely different direction. The person's true gait might be entirely different, and what we're seeing is an artifact of the disguise itself. Each interpretation is reasonable, and each leads somewhere different. The injury theory personalizes the subject. It gives them a physical characteristic that could be traced. The costume theory depersonalizes them. It suggests a deliberate act of misdirection, making the subject even harder to identify. Both are plausible. Both are supported by evidence from the footage. And without more information, it's impossible to know which is correct. The investigation splinters, with teams pursuing parallel lines of inquiry based on these conflicting expert opinions. This is a common problem in complex cases. The evidence itself becomes a source of division, not clarity. Here's the problem. It's a problem of absence, not presence. In most criminal investigations, analysts look for anomalies, actions that deviate from the norm. A person running in a place where people walk. A person hiding in a place where people are visible. A person acting erratically where calm is expected. These anomalies are the hooks, the starting points for behavioral analysis. But in this footage, there are no such hooks. Nothing in the footage is overtly wrong. The movements aren't frantic. The behavior isn't erratic. The subject doesn't force doors or break locks. They don't seem startled by sounds or aware of the camera. They interact with their environment with a quiet efficiency that is deeply unsettling. The lack of suspicious behavior is, in itself, the most suspicious thing of all. It suggests a level of planning and composure that is far more dangerous than panicked, impulsive action. The person looks comfortable, and comfort is difficult to profile because it doesn't stand out. Comfort is the baseline. It's the default state we expect to see in any given environment. When someone appears comfortable, our brains are wired to dismiss them as part of the background. They don't trigger our internal threat detection systems. This subject has weaponized comfort. They have adopted the one emotional state that is hardest to distinguish from innocence. An analyst can spot fear, anger, or panic. But how do you profile a lack of these things? How do you build a case around someone who simply looks like they're supposed to be there? This leads to a paradox. The evidence is rich. In fact, it is too rich. Every second of footage provides thousands of data points. The precise angle of a joint, the duration of a footstep, the speed of a head turn. In theory, more data should lead to more certainty. But here, the opposite happens. Every detail generates interpretation. Every interpretation generates disagreement. The slight tilt of the head. Is it a sign of listening or a habitual tic? The pause before a door. Is it hesitation or a methodical check of the surroundings? The way they carry their arms. Is it a natural swing or a sign of carrying a concealed object? For every expert who argues one point, there is another who argues the opposite, using the exact same visual evidence. The data is a Rorschach test. Each analyst sees a pattern that reflects their own specialty and experience. And the more accurate the data becomes, the less certain the conclusion feels. The investigation becomes saturated with information, a phenomenon known as analysis paralysis. The sheer volume of possibilities, all equally plausible, makes it impossible to commit to a single theory of the case. The signal is lost in the noise. The person in the video remains a ghost, a collection of data points without a name or a face. The footage, which promised to provide answers, has instead created 1,000 new questions. And the truth remains just out of frame, obscured by the very details meant to reveal it. Years pass. The passage of time can feel like an erosion, wearing away at the sharp edges of a mystery until only a smooth, featureless stone remains. But in this case, time has done the opposite. It has not eroded the evidence. It has encased it in amber. The footage remains public, a digital ghost replaying its silent, inscrutable loop on countless screens across the world. The timeline, meticulously constructed and verified, remains intact, a rigid skeleton of facts, moments, and timestamps that is not bent or broken under the weight of years of scrutiny. Every second is accounted for, every movement is documented, and yet the central question remains unanswered. No identification holds. Despite the clarity of the footage, no name has ever been definitively attached to the figure at the center of this case. The face, the gait, the presence, all have been analyzed by law enforcement, by forensic experts, and by a global community of dedicated citizens. Thousands of tips have been submitted, each one a potential thread. But every thread has led to a dead end, a mistaken identity, or an unverifiable claim. The individual remains a silhouette, defined only by their actions on a single day. No theory advances beyond possibility. Speculation has swirled, forming intricate webs of motive and opportunity. Was it a crime of passion? A professional hit? A random act of violence? A message? Each hypothesis is plausible, yet none are provable. They remain suspended in the realm of conjecture, unable to solidify into a coherent, evidence-backed narrative. This isn't because the case lacks evidence. On the contrary, it is rich with it. The problem is that the evidence refuses to point. It presents a tableau of facts without a narrative direction. It is a collection of dots that refuse to be connected into a recognizable picture. This case is often described as baffling. It's a convenient label, a way to categorize something that defies easy explanation. To call it baffling is to suggest a puzzle with missing pieces, a code that is simply too complex to crack. It implies that if we just had one more clue, one more witness, one more angle, the entire mystery would unravel. But that's not accurate. To label it baffling is to misunderstand the nature of the problem. This case isn't a puzzle with missing pieces. It's a puzzle where all the pieces are on the table, but they form a picture we don't recognize. It's instructional. It serves as a powerful and perhaps uncomfortable lesson in the limits of our own perception and the tools we trust to show us the truth. It shows us something fundamental about the relationship between information and understanding. Facts don't interpret themselves. A timestamp is just a number. A frame of video is just a collection of pixels. A sequence of events is just a list. They are inert, objective data points that hold no inherent meaning. We are the ones who supply the context, the narrative, and the interpretation. We project our own logic, our own experiences, and our own biases onto the evidence, hoping to see a story emerge. This case demonstrates what happens when the evidence refuses to conform to any of our familiar stories. It teaches us that accuracy doesn't create meaning. We can have a perfectly accurate timeline, a crystal clear image, and a complete set of facts, and still be no closer to the truth. Accuracy is a measure of correctness, not of significance. The failure here is not a failure of data collection, but a failure of synthesis. The facts are all correct, but they do not add up to a meaningful conclusion. And most importantly, it proves that visibility does not guarantee understanding. We have a tendency to believe what we see. The age of surveillance has fostered a deep-seated faith in the power of the camera. We believe that to see an event is to know it. This case challenges that faith directly. We see everything, yet we understand nothing. The footage provides a window, but the window looks out onto a landscape we cannot comprehend. The visibility is perfect, but it only illuminates the depth of our own confusion. We trust timelines because they feel final. They impose order on the chaos of events. A timeline is linear, logical, and absolute. It says, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. It creates a structure that feels definitive and objective. It's a framework we rely on to make sense of the world, to establish cause and effect. We see the sequence and our minds instinctively search for the narrative thread that connects A to B to C. We trust video because it feels objective. It's a mechanical witness, an eye that doesn't blink, a memory that doesn't fade or distort. Unlike human testimony, which is prone to error, bias, and emotion, the camera simply records. It captures light and motion with cold, impartial precision. When we watch surveillance footage, we feel as though we are seeing reality itself, unmediated and unfiltered. We become the silent observer, the ghost in the machine, watching events unfold as they truly happened. This feeling of objectivity is powerful, and it's why video evidence is often considered the gold standard in any investigation. But this case proves something quieter, something more profound. It reveals the silent assumptions that underpin our trust in these tools. It demonstrates that even when everything is correct, when the timeline is perfect and the video is clear, we can still be fundamentally wrong about what it means. The failure is not in the technology, but in the space between the technology and our comprehension. The timeline shows us the what, but it cannot give us the why. The video shows us the action, but it cannot reveal the intent. These are the elements that transform a sequence of events into a human story, and they are precisely what is missing here. The evidence provides the grammar of the event, but not the language. We can parse the sentence, but we cannot understand its meaning. This is the paradox of certainty. We have gathered all the certain facts, yet the truth remains completely uncertain. Each piece of evidence is a solid, unshakable pillar. But the pillars stand in an open field, supporting nothing. They don't form a structure. They don't lead to a conclusion. They simply exist, a testament to an event that is both perfectly documented and entirely unknown. We are left with a blueprint for a building that can't be built, a map of a country that doesn't exist. The more we scrutinize the details, the more the larger picture dissolves. Nothing was missing from this case. Every piece of available evidence was collected, cataloged, and analyzed. The chain of custody was perfect. The forensic process was by the book. There was no lost tape, no contaminated sample, no overlooked witness. Nothing was hidden. The crime was not committed in the shadows, away from prying eyes. It happened in view of a camera, its actions recorded for posterity. The perpetrator did not wear a mask. The timeline was not obscured. The evidence has been public for years, available for anyone and everyone to examine. There is no secret file, no confidential report that holds the key. Everything is out in the open, and yet, nothing resolved. The abundance of information has led not to clarity, but to a more profound and persistent state of ambiguity. The case remains frozen in its initial state, a permanent question mark. It stands as a stark reminder that the opposite of ignorance is not always knowledge. Sometimes it is simply more information, perfectly rendered and utterly silent. This is Armchair Files, and this was File 013. If this case unsettled you, share it with someone who believes clear evidence always leads to answers.